self-serving money and technology.
Okay. So if the country's been off track for a significant portion of your life, why now? Why is now the time to do this?
Well, because now people are woken up and ready to roll.
Okay. Do you know how that came up, how that happened?
I think the main thing was when the banks and their friends got, I don't know how much it was, $17 trillion? No one really knows. And instead of, redoing people's mortgages to keep them in their houses, instead of creating jobs, they just bought their private islands and their private armies, and basically, in a sense, staged a coup. And meanwhile, America is essentially bankrupt, and millions of people are without work, without homes, and everything else. And so, you can only push people so far. And I'm sure the Arab Spring was a big inspiration. And so I think you probably know that the Canadian magazine Adbusters suggested that people go down and occupy Wall Street, and so they did.
Yeah. Okay. So the bailouts were several years ago. What do you think has been happening in the time between then and now why weren't we on the streets then?
Well, I think a lot of people hoped that their representatives in Congress would have done something in the last 3 years since that happened. And instead they've done nothing except party with the billionaires. Okay. So I think people have realized that representative government has been corrupted, and they're ready for something new. It turns out that 22 years ago I had an experience in Guatemala that convinced me of the same thing. And so I've been working for 22 years for what they call direct or participatory democracy, so that when the government doesn't represent you, you can pass laws, the people can pass laws themselves. And that's what this vote.org website, which I run, is about. It promotes Senator Mike Gravel's project for better and national ballot initiatives.
Okay. If we do become a direct democracy in this country, what kind of changes do you think we'll need to implement to get there?
Well, let me just make it clear. All of our opponents, and that includes essentially all representatives, all people who have power, are against sharing that power with the people. And in my 22 years of working on this, I know that they will lie and cheat in order to cast aspersions on the idea. None of us want to replace representatives with ballot initiatives. We want both, just like obviously Colorado and 23 other states have ballot initiatives, but we still have legislators. So they always accuse me, and this includes people like Senator Mark Udall and his predecessors, and all my former congressmen. Jared Polis is an exception, maybe the only exception. They'll all say, oh, you want to get rid of representative government and have a, mob rule. And that's not true at all. We want to have both. We want to make the big decisions and let the representatives carry out the details. So the change is made. If people go to this website, vote.org, they will see that they can vote to put this in the Constitution. And most people will say, well, that doesn't work under, I think it's Article 5, the Congress has to pass it, and then 3/4 of the state legislatures. But the fact is that the Constitution itself was not created by representatives. The representatives in the 13 colonial legislatures refused to ratify the Constitution, so the founders of the country went directly to the people and had conventions in order to approve the Constitution. So by the same reasoning, if the people show an overwhelming vote, in this case, for putting this in the Constitution, then it goes in. And so you can, if you're a registered U.S. voter, you can go to vote.org and vote for or against putting the national ballot initiative in the Constitution.
Okay.
And that's the big thing. But, to get we want to get 60 million people to vote for it, more than have ever voted for any president. And so that takes a big media campaign and a certain amount of money.
Yeah, I agree. Demographically, how would you classify the founders of our Constitution and our country?
I think they were mostly white, landowners, but they were mostly farmers. And so that tends to keep people relatively honest. They certainly were on the wrong side of slavery, but, that's where the country started. You got to start where you are.
Yeah. Now, demographically, how would you qualify the Occupy movements?
From what I've seen, it's very diverse. It's obviously mostly people who have time to camp out 24/7 are mostly younger people and jobless people. But I saw, it was on Facebook yesterday, going around, this young woman who got an inheritance at age 21, and she was down there with her sign saying, tax people like me more. I think I used to live in Guatemala, and there rich people live behind barbed wire and, all kinds of defenses. And I don't think she wants to live like that. She wants to be part of her society and feel comfortable and free. I think, a lot of rich people have kind of backed themselves into a corner where now they're under attack, and all they had to do is pay their fair share. Take the Koch brothers, they have, I forget, $15 billion each or something. If you take away $100 million from them, they still have enough for 1,000 lifetimes.
Yeah.
But instead, they may go to jail for what they've done.
Okay. Why do you think the Koch brothers are not, and people like them are not paying their taxes?
Not paying taxes?
Not paying sufficient taxes to support the rest of the community.
Well, most of their money comes from investments, and investments pay only, capital gains taxes, which is 15%,
Right.
whereas, most of us pay more than that, on our little salaries.
So they know how to work this system so that they don't have to pay quite as much as we do. Why do you think they do that? What is their... for us, we can hear that and go, that just sounds greedy. But for them, there's an intention there that maybe is not so poorly intentioned. Do you think they're just evil, or do you think they have a sense of, wanting to control or power? What do you think it is that motivates them to behave like that?
Well, if you have $15 billion, it's not that you need another $1 billion. You can only drive one car at a time. You can only drive one yacht at a time. And so it's beyond greed. It's about, showing that that you dominate. And I think it's perverted, basically. I think the psychology of people like that, it's beyond just wanting more. I would like some more money. But if I had $15 billion, I'd be looking for ways to give it away. And they're looking not just to get more, but to enslave people. I think, that it's not just how much absolute money you have, but how much more you have than other people. That's what pumps up your ego, is that other people have less. And I've seen this, even on a much smaller level in Boulder, where some people like to hurt other people.
Yeah.
And those people tend to rise to the top. Psychopaths aren't just serial killers.
No, they're not.
There was a very interesting study that showed that 25% of the CEOs of, major corporations had all the, symptoms of being psychopaths. And only 1% of the regular population. So the evilest people float to the top in a system like ours.
So what does that say about us systemically when that's a possibility? Is that how our country was meant to... Was it built like this? So what went wrong?
Well, I don't really know, but I think part of what goes wrong is, just there's probably 1,000 things, but the fairness doctrine